This is one of the videos in a series of videos I'm making which present concepts from my coaching practice. So themes occur time and again, and I've captured those themes and the lessons to learn in these videos, and I hope that you'll find those useful. So this one is about choices and consequences, and how aligning those properly can free you up in ways that will improve your life very significantly. So let's consider a human being who has the ability to make some choices, and those choices in general will precipitate consequences. Now, in an ideal world, those consequences are visited back on the choice maker, and when that happens, things are healthy. For example, there is freedom of choice, but there's also containment, because responsibility is cultivated when a decision creates a consequence, and that consequence is visited back on the person that made the decision. So this is a self-regulation process, and that generates a world which is fair and is stable, because irrational, poor choices, selfish choices, have negative consequences on the chooser, and similarly positive choices have positive consequences for the chooser. So it's a kind of self-organizing system which is useful at many levels in society. Let's consider another scenario, however, and this is one I see quite a bit in my client worlds. Their worlds are not as healthy as they could be, and often it's because of this mechanism. There's a chooser who makes a choice, and there is a consequence which is not visited upon the chooser but on someone else. Now, when that happens, the chooser still has freedom, but there's no containment, because the chooser is free of the consequences of their actions, but those consequences are inflicted on someone else who had no choice in the matter. This leads to selfishness, injustice, and instability. So this is called an open loop system, because there's no connection between the consequences and the chooser. So there is no loop, it's a straight line process, and that's something which is almost always unhealthy in society and for people in general. And that's a pattern we see lots in coaching, and I always address it in the same way, and we'll talk about that method shortly. Here are some examples. Carrying your partner. This is an example from my case files that arose quite recently, although it has occurred many times before. Here's what my client said. My husband's lovely, but he's so laid back. I come in from work and I have to feed the baby because I know he won't. I have a really demanding job, and I resent his relaxed lifestyle, which seems to be at my expense. I've tried tackling him about it, but it always goes bad, so I put up with it. Sound familiar? As always in these cases, the basic method is to close that loop, to arrange so that the chooser is reacquainted with the consequences of his own actions, his or her own actions. And my client in this case is sitting outside of that loop and is not directly involved in the feedback process which is going on. We sorted this out for her. It wasn't easy, but here's what happened. I'm out of the loop. His responsibilities are between him and his son. Seems to be, to me, how it ought to be. The wailing and his own conscience motivates him to act. I don't. So she's not playing the role of teacher or boss or punisher, and so all of the personal dynamics which would go with those roles are completely removed from the situation. Any gripe he has is with reality, not with me. He sees that now. I'm off the hook. I'm not carrying his weight as well as mine anymore. So that's a much healthier situation. Was it easy to accomplish? No, and we'll talk about the realities a bit later on. But I just want to give you at this point the gist of how that's supposed to work. Now, this same process, excuse me, this same process works in management. Let's see how that works. Some employees deliver bad performance in their jobs, and the consequence is often visited not on the employee making those bad performance decisions, but on someone else, and in this case it's the manager of those people, or the would-be manager of those people. Here's what my client said. My staff do a poor job generally and I have to fix it up. It's just easier to do things for myself. Now that's very, very common. It's just easier to do things for myself. But that's always wrong in the long term, though it's always right in the short term. However, she says, but I'm run ragged trying to hold everything together, and they're not. I resent it. And who wouldn't? So as always, the advice is close the loop. Create a situation whereby someone performing poorly receives back the consequences of that poor performance. And the manager's role is outside that loop. So now she says we operate a meritocracy. That's what this loop is really about. Staff are measured on how well they do. Consequences range from massive pay increases to dismissal. So it's worth noting there that the consequences available are both very, very positive and very, very negative. And this is a really good way to motivate people. People in a job who feel that if they try hard, good things will come, like money, prestige, career advancement and so on, will probably try hard. And people who don't feel that, and many public service sectors spring to mind, just tend to sort of go through the motions, do the minimum possible, keep your head down, wait for the pension and death. That's, in my view, not a very healthy way to live your life, and it's certainly not a very healthy way to run an organisation. So she says, my role is not to fix up their mess or do their work anymore. I am there to oversee the meritocracy and develop staff. So this manager's role is to make sure this loop works properly. And that's, again, not generally a very simple process, but it's a far preferable process to the one that she was operating before. Staff have a framework to develop skills, responsibilities and careers. Staff also work in a realistic workplace which will serve them out in the world. So the workplace should be a microcosm for the world in which justice is important and seen to be done.